Advanced Psychoproctology for Beginners, Aholes Diagnosis, Treatment, and Prevention with Dr. Jeremy Sherman. Welcome to Class 7 of this Advanced Psychoproctology course for beginners. As mentioned at the end of the last session, today we'll focus on how a-holes go beyond attempts to get the last word in order to get the last word on who gets the last word. Spin dominance is insisting on one's interpretation as the last word. Frame dominance is insisting on being the one who gets to decide who gets the last word. Despite our human uniqueness, we remain a dominance hierarchy mammal, all of us pursuing status in diverse social domains. You probably know the feeling. Say you're at a party and someone shows up sporting an advantage on some asset you aim to possess. For example, looks, charm, talent, prestige, power, or wealth. Unconsciously and within seconds, your intuitions make a beat 'em or join 'em assessment. Will your status rise by association with them, or are you better off finding some way to discount their advantages, reasons why they aren't a threat to your status? Sure, they have that advantage, but they don't have some other advantage I have. One way or another, or both, kowtowing or catty, and sometimes both, will reckon with the competition, seeking ways to keep our status aloft, if only in our minds. You don't have to be a deficient soul to seek a competitive edge over others. We all do from time to time, no matter what our social status or priorities. Even if we're a member of some oppressed minority, taught lifelong not to expect any social status, we still might look for reasons why we're better than someone else of lower status still. We might say it doesn't happen to us because we don't care, for example, about looks the way some people do. That may be. We don't compete for status on all dimensions, but we all do on some. You may not be lookist, prejudiced towards attractive people, but chances are you're at least luckist. You want to be among the lucky people more than you want to be among the unlucky ones. Such social climbing is practical. You're more likely to keep food on your table if you're higher status. We have that practical pressure in common with other animals. Alpha males get more sex and other resources. But in us, status is also symbolic. Just look at the billionaires who can't stop accumulating, even though they have all of their needs and wants more than met for life. Luckism is a social manifestation of confirmation bias, too. We filter for people who make us feel better about ourselves, which doesn't mean excluding everyone beneath us, just that we monitor to stay in the upper echelon, feeling kindred with luckier over unluckier people. Lucky people might help us climb. Unlucky people might tug us down. We're told to love the least among us, but we're squeamish. Plenty of us are ambivalent about our appetite for social status. On the one hand, celebrating our good fortune, showing it off, name-dropping, and posting flattering selfies. On the other hand, we might be embarrassed by the way we demote others through our self-elevation. When a hottie shares a selfie, is it self-celebration or a put-down to the unhot? It's both, since status is relative. The higher we rise, the lower it puts others relative to us. Pride is ambiguously one of the 7 deadly sins and a badge of honor. Luck is ambiguous too. It can mean the random chance allocation of good fortune, or it can mean to be heaven-blessed or chosen. We shuttle between treating life as a game of luck or skill. If it's luck, we can't take pride. If it's skill, we can take pride. When we're down, we'll call it random bad luck. When we're up, we'll attribute it to our blessed efforts and assume those beneath us just aren't trying hard enough. For example, if we're obese, we might try to resolve it to being genetic luck of the draw. If others are obese and we aren't, we might try to embrace our advantage as proof that the obese lack our self-discipline. In short, no one wants to be the worst by whatever standards matter to them. To be the worst is to invite discomfort in our own skins. Something in us tracks how we're doing and tries to do better relative to others. Again, as in high school pecking orders, and we don't just outgrow that. Dominance is a conscious and unconscious metric for our well-being. It's good news when the numbers of ranking beneath us in status grow and the numbers above us in status shrink. As long as we aren't sinking in status, we're likely to continue doing what we're doing. We therefore welcome even marginally credible ways to outrank others in bulk, discounting a large swath of humanity. The evidence is in and is clear. Racial, gender, and spiritual differences in ability are at most cultural, not inherent. Why then do racism, sexism, and religious bigotry persist? Because once we have embraced a way to bulk demote other potential competitors, it's hard to give it up. Relinquish your caste system pretense of superiority, and your social stock plummets. It's like that party suddenly flooding with competitors you can no longer discount. Dominance doesn't just go to the spin winner, but to the one who gets to decide who won. Frame dominance is central to understanding Aholes. I'll call it trumpiring, trumping or beating by posing as the umpire, a competitor in a debate posing as a neutral umpire, overseeing the debate. Umpiring is to sports much like judging is to courts, deciding, for example, what's fair or foul play, what's in bounds or out. Trumpiring is like an advocate entering the courtroom to argue a case, but sneaking up onto the bench to preside over the case as the judge, deciding, for example, what is and isn't admissible evidence. If you challenge their authority to play judge, they'll summon a higher authority still, themselves again. No matter how you challenge their pretense of authority, they'll claim still higher authority and reject your challenge. They're going to set the terms for the debate, posing as impartial, but deciding always in their own favor. To understand Aholes, you have to understand frame dominance or trumpiring. For that, we're going to have to zoom out from psychoproctology for a moment to a topic that it's nested within. Nested topics, or more technically, recursion. Folding something back into itself, like thinking about thinking, or deciding about deciding, feeling about feeling, or getting the last word on who gets the last word. Supposedly, someone once asked Einstein what he thought was the most extraordinary phenomenon in the universe. His answer was compound interest. Compound interest is recursion too, folding money back into money, income into capital. A nuclear chain reaction is recursion also, a population explosion of reactions, each reaction sparking more, which in turn sparks still more. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer by recursion. The rich by money's compound interest, the poor by compounded complications, each setback sparking other setbacks. To understand and talk about recursion, you'll find the prefix meta handy, as in metacognition, thinking about thinking. To translate meta, think of it as something about itself. That's recursion. Your meta feelings are your feelings about your feelings. Meta angst is your angst about having angst. And meta doubt is doubting yourself because you doubt so much. Or meta fighting, fighting about fighting. Or meta deciding, deciding how to decide. If you ever worked on some ad hoc committee, or even just decided what movie to go to with friends, you probably dealt with a little meta deciding. Sometimes you have an established formula for deciding, some bylaws or rules. But if not, you have to decide how to decide. In Class 4, we engaged in meta deciding how to decide how to categorize Aholes. In particular, we were meta-categorizing, categorizing better versus worse ways to categorize. Though recursion is disorienting, like trying to eat our own mouse or trying to orient in a hall of mirrors, it's also familiar. Try this multi-layer meta-argument. Mom says, "You kids stop fighting." And boy says, "But she started it." And girl says, "No, I didn't, you did." And mom says, "I don't care who started it, I want it to stop." Then dad comes in and says, "Oh, let them fight, it's good for them." Mom says, "I don't like it, I think it's terrible." And grandma comes in and says, "You two shouldn't argue in front of the kids." And grandfather comes in and says, "Dear, don't tell them how to raise our grandkids." That's easy enough to track, right? And what is the argument? Well, there's the children's fight, the children's argument about who started it, the mother's attempt to stop it, the father's attempt to stop her from stopping it, and then each of the grandparents' interventions. The grandpa's argument is a meta argument. And the meta could have gone on from there. For example, someone saying that they should all just stop talking. That would be an attempt at the last word. Not that it would work. Someone else could enter and insist that they should all keep arguing or that they need to settle on one argument. Recursion, or as it's called, going meta, opens a chain reaction can of worms. Researchers tease that anything you can do, I can do meta. And it's true. No matter what you're framing, someone can always step out going meta to talk about your framing. Recursion, or going meta, is the source of plenty of humor. It's funny two ways at least. First, because the layers of recursion are potentially infinite. Since everything we can do meta. Shaggy dog stories, for example, or the classic Monty Python argument clinic comedy routine in which two characters end up in an argument about whether it's futile to argue about whether they're having an argument. Second, it's funny because it's disorienting, like a kind of verbal slapstick in which you can't tell what's the topic. For example, are you deciding or are you deciding how to decide? Are you inside the topic or outside it, talking about the topic? The in and outness tickles us. Here's my favorite children's riddle. What do you get when you cross an elephant with a rhino? And the answer is elephino. It totters between being an answer within the question and stepping out of the question to give up on it. The classic Abbott and Costello comedy routine, who's on first, what's on second, is like elephino, ambiguously inside and outside the framing of the questions about the names of the baseball players. Are you laughing at me or with me? And even peekaboo tease at this in and out ambiguity. Sitcoms are peppered with irreverent side comments about the action, characters being diplomatic with each other, but with snide asides about each other. Are we in it together or am I outside it laughing at you? We hear recursion in Woody Allen using his outside voice to voice self-doubt, or Jim Gaffigan's whispered, high-pitched, audience-channeled criticism of his act midstream. All of this plays with recursion. Any successful stand-up comedy routine has audiences tottering on the edge between laughing at and with the comedian and each other. At their most profound stand-up comedy shows are churches of recursion, whole congregations laughing at and with each other, and about life's inescapable slapstick ambiguity. Humanity is a hoot, and having language is a big reason why. Animals can't go meta the way we can. You need words for our recursive potential, even simple words like this and that. If you're fighting, you can say, this is terrible, and you're to blame for it. Without language, you can't mark debates to step out of them to debate about them. But with words, or more generally, symbols, you can. There's recursion, of course, in math as well. For example, the parentheses we use to nest equations within equations. Symbols make us able to go meta ad infinitum and ad nauseum. For example, a brat who robotically answers, yeah, but why, to every answer they get. Who has time or energy for that? Our brains peter out quickly on recursion. For example, you understand a sentence like, I think she knows she's lying. But try, he told me that they think you're aware that I think she knows she's lying. That one makes us balk and bonk out from exhaustion. We're busy. We don't have time to go down recursion's endless rabbit holes within rabbit holes. So of course we want last words, like the family members in the dialogue above, not that they got them. Again, I've called this the last word paradox. With words, we seek last words that with words we can never get because no matter what you claim is the last word, someone can always chime in with some other words about your words. In Class 5, I said that we humans are trudging through an erosive sandstorm of possibilities. Those possibilities aren't all at the same level of analysis, like being at forks in some flat road. No, the sandstorm is recursive. For example, lying in bed at night, thinking about what the heck you could have been thinking when you said what you said that made your partner step out to wonder what they're doing with you, wondering for the first time whether they belong in with you. Now that they're wondering, you're wondering how to get them back in with you or to accept whether you're on the outs permanently. And on top of that, you feel terrible about feeling terrible and how it's ruining your sleep. That's meta-angst, angst about having angst. And it's meta-doubt, doubts about having so many doubts. Ruminating in the dark, you totter between in and out on multiple meta levels. That's the cost you pay for being the kind of person who can hear themselves think. We can zoom in and out, trying to figure out the right level of analysis for our circumstances, reading between the lines within the lines, the text within the context. That's the sandstorm of possibilities entering an open window at night. It's meta-doubt, doubt about doubts, doubting whether you can handle them all. Meta-doubt is perhaps the best definition of self-doubt, not thinking you're up to the challenge of all the doubts you experience in this multi-level sandstorm of possibilities. No wonder Aholes want to shut the window once and for all, keeping all doubt away. Because of the infinite recursion made possible by language, we can end up feeling like we're trapped in a hall of mirrors. We can try to zoom out to get the whole picture, to locate ourselves in the hall of mirrors, to really find our authentic selves, but that's not possible. We can't get the whole picture on anything. No matter how many factors we factor in, there's always the possibility that there's some overlooked factor that, had we considered it, would have changed our interpretation. No matter what we claim is the last word, we or someone else can claim another last word about it. At our most neurotic, we experience life as a hall of mirrors that's also a hall of horrors, a fearsome unknown lurking in every recursive reflection. We'd want to escape it all with some revelation that stops the recursion. Introspection is a recursive hall of mirrors too. It's not accurate to describe it as looking inside to discover our true, authentic self. Rather, with language we can imagine being an outsider interpreting ourselves. A self-interpretation, like "I'm a good person," is a simple recursive interpretation. We could call that first guessing ourselves, a first recursion. Second guessing ourselves would be another recursive step out. For example, saying, "I like to think I'm a good person." That's like observing the observer, and it can go on from there, ad infinitum and ad nauseum. There's no reason one couldn't say, "I believe that I think that I like to say that I think I'm a good person," other than who can follow such nonsense, and why would we? Still, with recursion, for every story we tell about ourselves, another story could be told about the storyteller. For every interpretation we make of ourselves, another interpretation could be made of the interpreter. Second guessing is where doubt kicks in. If you say "I'm a good person" and leave it at that, you're introspecting as though stating a fact. But if you say "I like to think I'm a good person," you expose that thinking you're a good person is just your interpretation. Socrates said that the unexamined life is not worth living. Still, the multi-level, always examined life is no great shakes either. No wonder people settle for pat self-description, which in the extreme becomes what I've called talk is walkism, as though we're the last words on ourselves, for as though saying you're a good person proves that you are. Aholes don't second-guess themselves. They second-yes themselves. I have proof that I'm a good person because I've checked with myself about it dozens of times, and yup, I always agree that I am. No evidence to the contrary necessary or even admissible. Recursion is how we exposed all of those moral dilemmas posing as moral principles. Negativity is a no-no, be intolerant of intolerance, never be a name-caller, you shouldn't be judgmental, shame on those who shame. In each case, we folded the principle back into itself and found that the principle contradicts itself. In Class 2, I mentioned that these self-contradictory moral principles might tempt us to decide that morality is bogus. That's the hypocritical response to recursion, a liberation into anarchy, a moral free-for-all in which those who moralize best win. That's the a-hole response. You do it too, taken as license to treat morality as nothing but an arsenal. Since no one can get the last word, just pretend to have it and dominate everyone. Just fake infallibility. Pretend you've got the last word and exploit confirmation bias to prevent anyone from ever one-upping you with a word about your last word. Contrast that with the fallibilist approach I'm encouraging as the harder yet healthier response to recursion, more in keeping with life's trial and error, iffy effort. When fallibilists find that a moral principle contradicts itself, they don't dismiss the moral in question as bogus. They get more attentive to it. To illustrate, if someone calls you a name-caller, the hypocritical response goes something like, "Ha, you just called me a name-caller. That proves that you're a hypocrite and I don't have to care about name-calling at all. I'm free to do whatever." In contrast, the fallibilist response is more like, "Oh, it's not a principle, but a dilemma. Apparently, there are times to name call and not name call. I need to keep gaining the wisdom that comes of noticing the differences that make a difference between helpful and harmful name calling." Trying to guess well how to navigate such dilemmas, we recognize that there's always the potential for guessing wrong. You can guess well based on all the factors that you've considered, and given recursion, your guesses could still turn out wrong. Now, a-holes have found a way to pretend that they have escaped the guesswork. It's simple. If, given recursion, we end up in a hall of mirrors, just become the hall of mirrors for other people. Claim that you get the last word on who gets the last word. No matter what anyone says, just pose as the authority on whether they can say it, throwing out as inadmissible evidence anything you don't want people to say. In a recursive conflict, an a-hole just has to keep playing the next higher judge. They just have to out-meta all meta moves. And if you challenge them on always playing judge, they'll play judge about that too. Here's an example to illustrate how recursively loopy it can get when you're dealing with someone who trumpires, always claiming the last word, always controlling the frame for the conflict. Put down that knife. Why should I? It's a free country. Because I want to de-escalate our conflict before someone gets hurt. Yeah, well, I don't want to, and you can't make me. Fine, then I'll have to get a knife too. Ha, you're such a hypocrite. A minute ago you were telling me to put down the knife, and now you're grabbing one too? See, that's why I don't have to listen to anything you say. Fine, I'll put the knife down if you will. I won't. Then I have to pick up a knife too. Again, such a hypocrite. I'm never going to listen to anything you say. That's trumpiring. Trumping by umping. It's not complicated. All it requires is an air of unflappable self-confidence and a list of easy moves anyone can pair it with an air of supreme authority. Moves I'll list in just a minute. Donald Trump trumpires with an uncommon flourish. Trumpiring as he does, it doesn't matter what he says or does. He can lie, contradict himself, or oversee the unnecessary deaths of hundreds of thousands. His interviews can be total flops, so long as he swaggers with the air of the supreme adjudicator, deciding what counts as real and fake, nice and nasty. And so long as he always gives himself highest marks with an air of confident, fake, objective authority, he had the support of millions who misinterpreted his swagger as evidence of an uninterrupted winning streak. That's frame dominance. It's what's meant by calling the shots, pulling rank, or setting the terms of debate. Donald Trump trumpires nonstop. It's arguably the only thing he does. Still, trumpiring is not limited to him. One can trumpire for any cause or no cause at all, just to remain the framer-in-chief, the dominant person who gets to set the context for debate. Life is not a game. The stakes are higher, the rules are fuzzier, and it's multi-level, like the multi-level family debate we just visited. That said, there are game-like qualities to life. For example, the way that in a well-designed game, who's winning can change. Tables turn. A defensive advantage or disadvantage can flip to become an offensive advantage or disadvantage. A-holes are playing the game of life on two levels at once. They're trying to dominate within the game through spin dominance, but they're also changing the rules of the game by frame dominance and always to their advantage. They're in it to win it, but also outside it to rig it so they can continue to win it. We see frame dominance in the way tyrants work for dominance they'll use to change the laws in their favor so that they can remain dominant. We also see it in the way a-holes claim to win fair and square by cheating, rigging the rules to favor themselves. They'll gloat both about winning fair and square and about being shifty enough to shift the rules so they can continue to win. Are they playing the game or are they gaming the play? Hard to say, and they don't have to. They will be the supreme judges adjudicating what's fair in debate with you, and they'll attack you for any attempt to do the same. They'll call you on any negative shading you express about their interpretations, and they'll pretend to live by the sacred law that no one should ever spin or gaslight. And why? Because that's their advantage. They'll declare contempt of court when you don't stay on topic, whatever topic they want to talk about. If you make an attempt to frame the debate, they'll call foul. And why? Because frame dominance is their advantage. They'll do anything to keep you from sharing that advantage. That's largely the satisfaction of it for a-holes, not necessarily the joy. I suspect that they feel as okay as anyone, but they're dependent for their okayness on their capacity to remain the ones who control the spin and frame. Money, power, sex, flattery. I suspect that all of that is means to their end of maintaining a steady diet of evidence that they have absolute spin and frame dominance. Only they get to define reality. For a-holes, it's not just voicing opinions, it's deciding which opinions are permissible. Any challenge to their last word opinions can be deflected as impermissible with frame-dominant adjudication. There's a lot to be gained by trumpiring, for example, money, power, and sex. There's also simply the satisfaction of frame dominance. Language-using dominant hierarchy mammals like us feel safer when we can sway others to our decisions, and we feel safest when we can sway others to our way of deciding, which is what a-holes achieve by trumpiring. They become safe and free, as though they can do no wrong while doing all the wrong they want. We observe this safety in its sudden disappearance. An a-hole is a master of frame dominance and is vigilant against any threats to that mastery. When their vigilance fails, it's evidence of what they dread most, losing frame dominance. Occasionally, con artists get conned. Stalin, for example, reveled in his non-aggression pact with Hitler. When, by surprise attack, Hitler reneged on the agreement not to attack the Soviet Union, Stalin was outconned and shaken. Some historians argue that he had a nervous breakdown, and not just by having to war with Germany, but by being outwitted. In later class sessions on humbly humbling a-holes, I'll show how we can exploit an a-hole's obsession with frame dominance by out-dominating them. What follows here is a collection of common frame dominance or trumpiring moves. They don't just voice an advocated or spun opinion, they claim to decide what are and aren't permissible opinions. I've given names to these generic rhetorical moves. Some names are too cute, dumb, or awkward. Many end with the suffix "eyes," which suggests contriving, doing something theatrically for effect. There's being rational, and then there's rationalizing, being moral and moralizing, using weapons and weaponizing. It would be useful to have good names for each of these moves because, as a psychoproctologist, you'll want to be able to identify them as they fly by in debate. To name it is to tame it. In the examples I use here, I had a choice of pronouns to use. I could have said these are moves I make, you make, one makes, or that a-holes make. I chose we. These are trumpiring moves that we make, any and all of us in a pinch, or when feeling sloppy or sleepy, or just when we can get away with it. A-holes use them nonstop in their winner-takes-all infallibility death matches for spin and frame dominance. Okay, here goes. In our debate, you're out of line. Trumpiring. Claiming the last word on who gets the last word. Pretending we're the neutral judges presiding over debates we've entered. The equivalent of an advocate posing as the judge or an athlete posing as the umpire. You think that? You don't know anything, do you? Infallibility baiting. Turning a debate into a winner-takes-all death match to prove we're right about everything and our opponents are wrong about everything. This is not the time or place to bring that up. Inadmissing. Posing as a gatekeeper concerned about what's appropriate in order to block whatever challenges our authority. You're in no position to bring that up. Disqualifying. Posing as the gatekeeper who disqualifies challengers as if from on high. Don't be defensive. Gumbabying. Diagnosing our opponents in ways they can't respond to without confirming our diagnosis. For example, if they say, "I'm not defensive," it proves our point. Hey now, you don't know that for sure. Going uncertain. Posing as the neutral, scientifically skeptical authority by casting doubt on any challenge to our opinions, as though the fallibility of their arguments prove that our arguments are infallible. This one is popular with self-proclaimed climate change skeptics. There's a sliver of a chance I'm right, therefore you should assume I'm right. Likelifying, banging away on an improbable interpretation until it drowns out more probable interpretations. Hey, no fair, you won fair and square. If this were a fair contest, I'd win too. Sore loser fairnessing. When losing, pretending that a fair contest means an equal outcome, confusing equal opportunity with equal outcome. You're wrong, which proves I'm right. Defaulty logic, assuming that if we can find even one thing wrong with a challenger's argument, we're automatically right by default. Don't challenge me. It's a free country. I have a right to talk. Libertizing, pretending the challenges to our authority are challenges to our right to say anything without pushback. Pretending that our obsession with our right to dominate proves that we're crusaders for free speech. Moi? How dare you say I have that trait? I hate that trait. Exempt by contempt, pretending that hating a behavior when others do it to us proves that we don't do it to others. Don't tell me about justice. I hate when people are unjust to me. Justicizing, pretending that our obsession with injustices to us proves that we're authorities on justice. Why can't we all just get along by doing things my way? Pacifying, pretending that because we want compromise from others, we're crusaders for compromise. Don't shout, you're out of line. Etiquettizing, pretending to be the authority on proper etiquette, adjudicating foul play or sentencing people for contempt of court as though it's our court. Ha, I see the truth upsets you. Psychologizing, pretending that an emotional response disqualifies anyone who challenges us. This one is especially handy late in the debate. After having frustrated our opponents with our absolute unreceptivity, we can pull this one out as a sucker punch coup de grace. If you're still whining about this, maybe we should talk about this later. Unilattering. A unilateral decision to postpone it probably indefinitely, an annoying nag from a challenger. I pity you. You're so stupid. Sad. Crocodile tears. A put-down dressed up as sympathy. Wow, I'm disappointed. I expected more from a professional like you. Snobifying. Pretending to be the upholders of high standards that don't really matter to us. Hey, be nice. Shame on you for shaming me. Narcissism, the narcissistic use of that's not nice, as though anything that disappoints us is inconsiderate and therefore immoral. You're disrespectful, so you're wrong. Killing the messenger. Disqualifying challenges to our authority because they weren't delivered by the exacting standards we hold only for others, not for ourselves. Shame on you for shaming me. I won't listen to anyone who's of such low character as to accuse me of low character. Ad hominizing, killing the messenger for killing the messenger. I'm only interested in truth, facts, and proof. I know logic. I'm mathematical. I'm an expert on critical thinking. Self-expertizing, pretending that self-certifying ourselves as authorities means everyone should just trust us. And by the way, I'm right about everything because if there's one thing I know, it's how to detect bullshit. Casual self-flattery, thinking we're more credible for saying something less credible. I'm honest. I've got integrity. I'm not into game playing. Talk is walkism. Assuming that the compliments we give ourselves are conclusive proof of how we are, as though we couldn't possibly fail to practice what we preach. I'm totally honest, so I speak truth. Gut truthing. Confusing honesty with truth. Conveniently forgetting that plenty of people honestly believe falsehoods. Hey, my intentions are pure. Don't they count for everything? Virtue spelunking. Doing a gingerly investigation of our motives, pronouncing them pure, and acting like our self-report is the last word, pretending our self-reported intentions should automatically put others at ease. I didn't mean to hurt you. Means ending, ignoring our potential for doing collateral damage as though the only question is whether we made a deliberate priority effort to harm. For example, yes, I had an affair, but you should be okay with it because I wasn't deliberately trying to hurt you. Hurting you was just a side effect of me scoring. I don't mean to be critical, but you're an idiot. Fake caveating, a variation on talk is walkism, pretending that because we say we're not doing something, we're not doing it. Me not listening? I'm the best listener. Robo-besting, automatically refuting an accusation by robotically claiming to be the best at anything that sounds good. Me not listen? No, you're the worst listener. Robo-worsting, automatically deflecting an accusation with, I know you are, but what am I? Maturity. Blah, 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 whatever, but answer me this. Playing interrogator, filling the air with challenges and questions, taking control of the conversation by flooding it with our demands as though all burden of proof falls on those who challenge us. I'm right because many people agree with me. Massifying, selectively pretending that popular opinion decides the truth. We're winning, which proves we're right. Might makes right. Pretending that our local victories prove us right and righteous, conveniently forgetting that Hitler was victorious for a while. I'm right because I'm losing. That proves I'm a victim, martyr, hero. Might makes wrong. Pretending that because we have an outlying underdog position, we must be right and righteous, conveniently forgetting all the underdogs who prove both wrong and bad. I'm right because someone ancient agreed with me. Toga cred, pretending that old means true. I'm right because someone famous for something entirely different said it. Overgeneralized status cred, pretending that if someone was right about one thing, they're the last word on everything. I'm right because the truth was revealed to me or someone. Revelation, pretending we have special access to the last word truth channeled directly to us, conveniently forgetting all the other revelations people have that counter ours. Yeah, but this insight really moved me, so it's the last word. Memeing, being wooed by an insight so appealing that we assume we'll never need another insight on the matter. I'm right because it was or would have been right in this one situation. Overgeneralizing, treating a sometimes effective solution as an always effective solution. Nope, nothing could change my mind about this. Proud blind faith, pretending that a blanket refusal to consider other possibilities is a badge of honor. That's boring, confusing, or difficult, therefore it's irrelevant. Consumerizing, pretending that if something isn't intuitive to us, it's dismissible as false. Treating the pursuit of truth as like shopping for clothes. If it doesn't feel good on us right away, it's rejected. My belief is simpler, or more complicated, so I'm right. Procrastinizing, pretending the merits of an argument can be judged by its length or complexity, ours being the proper length, our opponent's the improper length. I don't know about that, so it's impermissible evidence. Blank blocking, pleading ignorance not as an admission to our limitations, but as evidence of our authority. If it's not on our radar, it doesn't exist. Is it true? Yeah, I hope so. Magical thinking, conveniently confusing hope and realism. You just can't handle the truth. Dreadful thinking, conveniently confusing dread and realism, pretending that visceral aversion is the only reason someone would disagree with us. If you don't freak out about it as much as I do, you must not care about it at all. Out freaking. Pretending that anyone who doesn't match our outrage is callous, as though there are only two possibilities, freaked out or indifferent. You aren't absolute about it, you must be absolute for its opposite. Polarizing, pretending choices are black and white. Either you're absolutely for one thing or for its opposite. It just is. Literal unreasonableness, not giving reasons. For example, employing the words just or only, as though they prove you get the last word and that everyone must ignore all other possibilities. Wow, I'm just shocked by your reaction. Estrangement, overreacting to someone's reaction as a way to shame them for their perverse abnormality. I win because I'm more hysterical than you. Outfiercing, pretending that truth is discovered not by realism but by intensity, as though if we exaggerate most wildly, our insistence trumps all other considerations. You spilled your milk. You should be more careful. Monday morning quarterbacking, claiming authority by stating the obvious warning after the fact. I survived it just fine. See, I knew it wouldn't be a problem. Hindsight bias, claiming authority by pretending the possibility we bet on was a certainty, like a child saying, because that time I wasn't hit by a car, I never have to look both ways. Don't tell me how I feel. I'm the authority on how I feel. You just want to put me down. Hypocritical psychologizing, pretending we believe that people always know what they feel as a way to keep people from psychologizing us while we psychologize them. Your kind always stereotypes us. Hypocritical generalizing, pretending that an unflattering generalization is wrong because, in general, no one should ever generalize. Don't jump to conclusions. Hypocritical jumping, jumping to the conclusion that someone has jumped to a conclusion. How would I do it? By succeeding. Gumming, pretending that fanatical passion to reach a goal is all it takes to achieve it, substituting a toothless goal for a plan with some teeth. That's all just talk, words, theory, hypothesizing, abstraction, or semantics. Anti-theory theorizing. Rejecting an argument because it was made with words or is in any way abstract. You're crazy. Why would I feel that? It's illogical. Logicizing. Assuming that our feelings are strictly logical. Other people have emotional feelings, but we don't. Ha! Gotcha. You're just playing gotcha. I blame you for playing the blame game. Blame gaming. Blaming someone for playing the blame game. Ha! If I were in your situation, I'd know exactly what to do. Skinless gaming. Pretending we're authorities because with no skin in the game, we can solve like an easy puzzle the problems of those who have skin in the game. I'm committed. You're pig-headed. They're totally different. Apple and oranging. Pretending a double standard isn't one by declaring an unexplained difference. Oh, so you're saying everyone should shut their eyes and be stupid? Willfully misinterpreted content. Exaggerating and distorting an opponent's argument to dismiss them. You want to say something? Fine, I'll shut up forever so you can dominate. Willfully misinterpreted processing. Trying to shame away an opponent's process suggestions by misinterpretation. You questioned my argument? Fine, I'll start all over again. Insistent replay. If they question our argument, we'll declare it over and over until they give up, as though if they understood it, they would automatically agree with us. Shame on you for violating whatever absolute moral principle my behavior demonstrates I don't care about at all, except when it comes in handy for guilt-tripping people into submission. Moralizing. Blaring our police sirens so loud it drowns out the sound of our violations. Shame on you for being so insensitive as to trespass on my unchallengeable safe space. Theatrical hypersensitivity or political correctness, acting offended to shut people up. Shame on you for being so sensitive as to infringe on my unchallengeable freedom to trespass. Theatrical hyperinsensitivity or anti-PC, barking at people for not tolerating your barking. Never mind, I don't have a right to say anything. Theatrical passive aggressiveness, pretending to be oppressed to shame someone who isn't actually oppressing us. Oh, hell no, I've been oppressed, so from now on, I'm right about everything. Post-traumatic ass syndrome, pretending a past disadvantage entitles us to eternal dominance. I wouldn't have said that. You must have heard me wrong. Ear blaming. Rather than addressing our inconsistencies, making the challenger wrong for misinterpreting. Accusing challengers of being bad listeners rather than admitting we're contradicting ourselves. Sounds like you have biases. Blind self-exemption, treating universal human traits as rare pathologies of the weak and maladjusted. You're projecting. Criticizing me only exposes what you don't like about yourself. Teflon gloating, a popular spiritual or new age way of saying, I know you are, but what am I? Ha, what a hypocrite. That's why I don't have to listen to you. You asked me to put down my weapons, and when I didn't, you picked up yours. Anti-conditionalism, pretending that different responses under different conditions is proof of hypocrisy. Like saying, you're a hypocrite. You think adults should drive, but toddlers shouldn't. So what? Everybody does it. False moral equivalenting. Ignoring questions of degree to distract from our absolute excesses. Since everyone lies sometimes, we can lie constantly. If you're not absolutely pure, your challenges mean nothing to me. Puritanizing, harping on the tiniest fault, real or imagined, in our challengers, as if their humanness proves our saintliness. Oh, you're just playing politics. Ulteriorizing, pretending that if we can imagine even one dirty ulterior motive, we don't have to listen to challengers. Look, I'm just calling it as it is. I'm just being honest, and you're being insulting. Loading, using spin or loaded terms to achieve frame dominance. I'm proud to demand more, stand my ground, speak up for myself, uphold my principles, and additionally to hold high standards, whereas you're just being pushy, attached, demanding, obnoxious, and not only that, pig-headed. Spinplex pile-on, redundancy disguised as reasoning, employing loaded synonyms to make our argument appear stronger and our opponent's argument appear weaker. You disagree with me about how to achieve the goal? You must not want to achieve the goal. Ends blackmailing, pretending to disagree about ends because of a disagreement about the means for achieving them. The only admissible evidence is mine, and it all points to me being right. Cherry-picking, ignoring counter-evidence. You're confusing, hurting, insulting, and disappointing me. Ewing, assuming that if there's a problem, it must be them, not us. You think too much. Fake objective mind measuring, pretending we're the measure of how much people should think. There's no reality anyway, so I can believe whatever I want, and there's nothing you can do about it. The doctrine of foregone inconclusion, pretending that really there's no reality, so we don't have to listen to anybody about anything. Wow, you're really obsessed with this. War on attrition, pretending that tenacity proves someone wrong. You're giving up? See, that proves I'm right about everything. You just can't admit defeat. Attritioning, claiming victory whenever someone is fed up with dealing with our stubbornness. And finally, silence. Ball playing, saying nothing as though our opponent isn't trying to get through to us. Quite a list, eh? And not even complete. Also add to it all the hypocritical statements we've discussed, like don't be negative and you shouldn't be judgmental, you should be more open-minded, and shame on you for shaming. These frame dominance moves can be overwhelming to hear as one long list. Still, I bet most, if not all, of these are moves you've encountered and probably even used in a pinch. You may not remember using them. We often don't. They flow from our mouths more readily than we are likely to notice. They just feel like the right things to say at the time. They're much easier to dish out than to take in from someone we're already finding frustrating. That we might reach for these from time to time nags us with the question threading through the whole course. If everyone uses these motives sometimes, what makes someone an a-hole? Again, a-holes use them wall to wall and nonstop for permanent frame dominance. So how does that happen? How does someone go from being a sometimes user to being an always user? That's what we'll be taking up in the next two classes. The first on how people can fall into an ideology or cult, and from there into a fortress of spin and frame dominance. The class after that will be about how we can become a-holes without any cultish or ideological prompting. See you next class.